Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 7, presented by Nicolet Law. He's John Kuhn, Packers legend. I'm Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. We're coming to you on Monday, October 13th, the day after the Packers beat the Bengals 27-18. That's a score we've seen before. And John, I was thinking, was that not the exact score you predicted? I think you were pretty close to that when we made our predictions last week.
Pretty close. It all starts running together as the season goes along. But if you're going to guess a score for the Packers at home, just guess 27 for them and less than 20 for the away team. And you're probably going to be within a few points here or there because that's what they've done through 3 games.
All right, we got a lot to get to. We got Josh Jacobs in the run game. We got a kicker fill-in coming up big. We got the defense showing some cracks in the second half again. We'll touch on Jordan Love and Micah Parsons, what Matt LaFleur said today, some key injuries. Zach Tom, lot to get to. But, John, I want to start with Josh Jacobs' flu game. I think that was the main story from last night. Jacobs said he was throwing up not only before, but during Sunday's game. He was mic'd up, so he didn't know if they were going to include that in the footage that they put out. He said he woke up Sunday morning with an illness. He didn't know where it came from. And in a clip that was put out on Twitter from, I guess, NFL or the team, whoever mic'd him up and was filming, he told a fan on the sideline before the game that he was feeling 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was pretty close. Oh, yeah. He had 150 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs' last 2 games, 307 total yards, 4 touchdowns. We'll get more into the nuts and bolts, and I want you to explain to the people like you did for me last night, schematically why the run game has improved over the last 2 games. But the Packers go as Josh Jacobs goes. He is their engine. What did you think of the way he put the team on his back literally last night?
Well, I think the best version of this Packers offense this year and even last year is the 2-headed monster of Josh Jacobs on the ground and Jordan Love putting that ball in the air. And when they're both clicking, this offense is really potent. And yesterday, what you saw is Josh Jacobs and the offensive line be able to lean against the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought Josh Jacobs was exceptional at breaking tackles one-on-one. There's been a lot of questions. What's wrong with Josh Jacobs? What's wrong with the run game? Well, they've had a lot of moving pieces on the offensive line. You saw some of those starters come back yesterday, their preferred starting offensive line for the first time since week 1. So that bode well for the running game. But really, Josh Jacobs just runs hard. He's got that Bama mentality, and I played with one down in New Orleans, and Mark Ingram, and I swear to God, they're nearly clones of each other. Derrick Henry's a little different because he's so tall, but these guys that go down, that come from Bama, that come from Nick Saban, they just run a different type of way. They're angry, they're mean, they want to break tackles, they want to embarrass the guy that's trying to tackle them, and you saw that a lot yesterday, a lot of forced missed tackles out of Josh Jacobs, and it was amazing because you could tell, like him personally, watching him on the sideline, he was not well. I saw him throw up a couple times. I had a photog on the sideline say, "Do you see Josh Jacobs? He's throwing up again." And I said, let him go. The big fella, he bows his shoulders and walks back out to the huddle and goes for another 5 yards. But that second touchdown run, how about that second touchdown run? Not going to be denied. Ran through 4 separate tacklers at a different point in time. Finishes on his feet, man. I love when a good run game comes together.
You do give credit to Jacobs there, and he deserves it. But that was what Jacobs said, one of the best block plays of his career. That defense parted like the Red Sea. So I give more credit to the blocking than Jacobs breaking those tackles. He wasn't like running through people. Elton Jenkins and Jordan Morgan parted the Red Sea on that one. Couple things I want to throw at you. So Matt LaFleur said he challenged the offensive line early in that game because the Bengals played more two-shell than LaFleur said he was expecting. LaFleur went over to the offensive line on the bench and said, if we're going to be getting 2 yards a carry and they're playing this much two-shell, it's going to be a long day for us. I need you guys to step up. And they did. Here's another interesting thing I thought. From weeks 1 to 3, and this kind of coincides with the run game's improvement over the last 2 weeks, which, go figure, Josh Jacobs had said multiple times early this season that it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for the run game to get going. Voila, it got going 3.5 games into the season, pretty much the second half of the Cowboys game. From weeks 1 to 3, Josh Jacobs faced the 4th highest percentage of stacked boxes in the NFL, 62.1%, where teams put 8 or more guys in the box against him. From weeks 4 to 6, obviously bye week is in there, the 46th. Sorry, I'm trying to read my handwriting. Josh Jacobs faced the 46th highest percentage of stacked boxes, 15%. So he's taking advantage of lighter boxes. And I teased wanting to touch on a schematic difference for why the Packers are having more success in the run game. And I'll just say what Tucker Kraft said, then I want you to break it down in layman's terms for people who may not understand. Tucker Kraft basically said last night when I asked him why the Packers were having more success in the run game over the last week and a half, that the type of defensive front that they're facing the last two games against the Cowboys and Bengals is different. Before that, they faced basically 4-down penetrating defensive fronts. In other words, and I'll try to explain it myself before you explain it better, is defensive lines that are more vertical and aggressive at the point of attack. Recently, they've been facing defensive lines that are more read and react, two-gap fronts who play more laterally, and it plays more to the Packers' strengths. John Kuhn, please explain on a more granular level what that means and why that has benefited the Green Bay Packers.
Well, there's a couple things that you combine there. You combine the two shell with a two-gap scheme on the defensive front, and they generally go hand in hand. When you have a heavy box, you generally have a penetrating defensive front that wants to attack the ball carrier on the way to the quarterback, meaning first and second downs. Micah Parsons told us when he got here, most of the sacks that he used to get in Dallas, they came on second down. He likes to chase the quarterback. He likes to get after the quarterback on second down. And if the run happens to occur, he'll stop the run and back on the way to the quarterback. And that's kind of a philosophy that the Packers take. But not every team takes that philosophy. In fact, like we saw this past week, a lot of two-gap schemes for the defensive line out of the Cincinnati Bengals, meaning on first and second down, they want to post their men, they want to take up space, they don't want any holes to create naturally, and they want to, and it's an instantaneous thing. They punch their man, they look, they're reading the flow, they're riding the shoulder pad of a lineman, and they want to fill up as much space as possible so they can stop the run. Other teams, they go straight upfield. They want to penetrate. That can be dangerous, especially if you have a two-shell, because you don't have much of a second level to make up for yourself. Two-gap schemes, they want the linebackers to make the tackle. Penetrating schemes, they don't care. They just want to wreak havoc and try and make a tackle in the backfield, tackle for a loss. Packers have had those softer kind of schemes, read and react schemes, along with a two-shell, and they've taken advantage of it. And this is why I said the best version of the Packers are when Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love are in tandem, both playing well, because those two shells, they come because Jordan Love exploits any type of open zone, field zone down the field. We saw him being exceptional in those first three games at being able to do that, and then the run opened up in the second half. But here's an instance where you can take advantage in the first half of a light box and a read and react type defense and then work into the passing game. And I think you can see why they complement each other.
And I thought it was also interesting how Kraft mentioned last night with some of the cross-action stuff the Packers do, whether it's with a pulling guard or, a pulling tight end, that can kind of get, flustered when there are those penetrating defensive linemen beating the Packers offensive linemen. It messes up kind of the timing of the Packers run game if there are guys cutting across the formation. And correct me if I'm wrong, and those penetrating defensive linemen beat their guy quickly enough, you can run into one of the pulling guys and it just messes up the entire flow of the play.
So that's why being able to not just do what you do well, but be able to attack teams' weaknesses really comes in handy, right? When you go against one of those teams that are a very penetrating front, what you're going to want to try to do is run a lot of outside zone. You want to try and stretch them, and you want to try and limit their penetration by having linemen shoulder to shoulder, keeping them on the line of scrimmage so they don't get into the backfield. Gap schemes, yeah, that can get tricky because if you have a down block and the man knifes across the guy's face, he might get into the backfield and knock off the puller before he can get around into his man that he's supposed to block. You should be able to run any scheme against any team, knowing that some runs are better calls than others. Obviously, Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenavich, the whole offensive staff has been really good at designing the run game to formulate what they think can attack both the Cowboys and the Bengals in their last two football games.
Everything the Packers do is based on the run game setting up the pass. That's what Kraft said last night. And there was one specific example of that coming to life in the game last night, and it was on Tucker Kraft's touchdown pass, or touchdown reception, I should say, where Jordan Love fakes the handoff to Josh Jacobs. Tucker Kraft really sells the run block on Osai, the defensive end. Osai kind of cuts inside because he thinks Josh Jacobs is getting the ball. Jordan Battle, the safety who's in the box, bites hard on the run fake, and then Tucker leaks out to the flat. Jordan hits him wide open, and Tucker does the rest because he's so good after the catch. So that's an example of how the Packers like to build the pass game off the run game. And you got to get that's why we always say it's always important to get the run game going first, because then it opens up so much more in the pass game. You mentioned Jacobs breaking tackles. 3.72 yards after contact per rush, according to True Media, which was third among running backs in week 6, at least through the Sunday games. Guys just praised Jacobs after the game, his leadership. Kraft said he's exactly what you're looking for, I'm paraphrasing, in a leader and a teammate. Matthew Golden, Romeo Dobbs said stuff along the same lines. Josh Jacobs is the heart and soul of this team. I think there are other leaders on the team, other vocal leaders, but Jacobs' combination of what he does on and off the field, like I said, the Packers go as he goes. And yesterday was a good example of that. Okay, I want to touch on some nuts and bolts from yesterday, tie up some loose ends. Lucas Van Ness, Matt LaFleur just said, as we record this at 4:21 p.m. on Monday, I just got back from LaFleur's press conference. He said Lucas Van Ness, who was carted off with a foot injury yesterday that he suffered on his sack, his red zone sack, Matt LaFleur said they avoided anything serious there, but it is TBD on how much time he misses. Javon Bullard was in the concussion protocol, which was scary for the Packers because he suffered a legitimate concussion in week 3 against the Browns. LaFleur said he did not suffer a concussion yesterday. He quickly cleared protocol, and that it was a major relief that he didn't suffer another concussion within a month. So those are the injury notes to tie up. Dontavian Wicks, I think he was questionable to return with an ankle injury yesterday. I can't remember if he went back in, but Matt LaFleur was not asked about that today. And then Zach Tom. I didn't talk to him afterward, but in the group transcriptions that we do, where all the reporters just send each other all the interviews so we can use each other because it's impossible to talk to everybody. A couple quotes from Zach Tom, who returned to play from that oblique injury that he missed a game, pretty much 2 games with. Tom said he didn't feel great. He was hurting bad, but it was manageable. And he said he normally remembers everything from a game, but the pain was so significant that he doesn't remember everything from yesterday's game.
Wow. So we got back from the bye. That's the good news. We got back from the bye and we were healthy, but we're already on the heel and the mend as we start this thing. Yeah, I mean, once you get hurt in a regular season, you rarely get that thing to go away. I mean, maybe an ankle, you can get an ankle to completely go away. That high ankle, you get the swelling out of there. Maybe you're good. You get an MCL or something like that. I think just seems to just nag on hamstrings. Hamstrings last forever in the National Football. Those things almost never seem to go away. And I can't imagine an oblique for an offensive lineman. And people are like, lineman? Oblique? Midsection? What? Yeah, you pull one of the linemen are wrestling and they're tussling and they got all the grappling going on every single play. I can't imagine that is ever going to feel good for Zach Tom the rest of the season. That's going to be something he's probably going to deal with for a long, long time. But credit him for gutting it out, right? Going out there and finishing the ball game. And he's going to be a big part of this Packers offense. We can't have him missing any more time if we want this run game to continue hitting its stride.
Speaking of the offensive line, they started off with a rotation of Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan, and this is not the first time they've done that. Not specifically with those two, but in week 2 against the Commanders, they started off rotating, I think it was Anthony Belton and Darian Kennard with Tom out, and then Belton just ended up playing the vast majority of the snaps. Same thing happened yesterday where they started off alternating Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan at right guard. Morgan got the first series, Ryan got the second, and then I believe it was just Jordan Morgan the rest of the way. So that was an interesting lineup note from yesterday. I do want to touch on before we...
Well, Matt, real quick,
Yeah,
Jordan
go
Morgan was the guy they were trying to find a spot for
Right.
on the starting line during training camp. It was between left tackle and right guard, and it was between Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, and Sean Ryan. And they wanted their best 5 out there, figuring Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, and Zach Tom were pegged as starters at their position. They wanted them to be the starting 5, and they were trying to figure out, does Jordan Morgan start at one of these other 2 positions? Well, as it started out, they couldn't really do that because they had injuries so early in the season to be able to go in that direction. Now they're back to having their starting 5 with Jordan Morgan right there. Maybe they felt like yesterday after the first couple drives, Jordan was doing a little bit better, securing and maintaining his blocks throughout, and that's why they kept it going. And don't be surprised. They're not shy to shake things up. If they feel like in another game, Sean Ryan is playing a little bit better at that spot, they might ride the hot hand each and every week.
John, before we get to a break here, I just want to get your thoughts on this offense big picture. We heard some guys last night talking about how there's still meat left on the bone. They've scored 27 points in 3 separate games against the Lions, the Commanders, and now the Bengals. They scored 40 in another. I think they're 8th in the league in points per game, but it still feels like, aside from that Cowboys game, they haven't really played to their potential. They obviously are getting Christian Watson back soon. Jaden Reed's been out. The running game got off to a slow start. Offensive line injuries. Jordan Love, I still think he's a very good quarterback, but he'll airmail Luke Musgrave by 20 feet one play, and then the next play drop one in a bucket to Golden. That's just what you're going to get from Jordan Love sometimes. I still think he's their guy and is a guy in this league you can win because of. And that opinion, I don't see it changing anytime soon. What do you think of this offense as a whole, and how good maybe they can be if they're putting up 26, 27 points a game on average, but they still don't seem to be touching their ceiling yet?
Well, it's exactly that. It's a team, they could easily average 30, 33 points a game. They could go on a hot streak and average 30, 33 points a game. And a part of that will have to come on the defensive side. Listen, this is complimentary football. Defense has only forced 2 turnovers this year, and one was deep in their zone and the other one was at the end of a half. So it's not like they're setting up the offense with short fields here. This offense has been efficient, and it hasn't even maxed itself out. What I mean by that is, yes, I'm not even worried about the airmail. I'm worried about, Jordan Love decision-making on 3rd and 8 when he scrambles out of the pocket, has a little pressure, tries to force one in, gets a tip ball interception. Like these are the things that Jordan Love now in year 3 as a starter should start eliminating a little bit more of those. At the same time, he doesn't really put the ball in harm's way all that much. So, I mean, how can you blame him? I mean, the guy, he fits these things in the spots. That throw to Golden was magnificent. I thought the 2-play stretch that really opened this game up was that throw down the sideline to Golden, followed by the next play is getting a little muddy in the protection, and Jordan Love steps up, finds Josh Jacobs on a little bit of an acrobatic check down. And I thought those 2 plays really opened the football game up and really gave Jordan Love some confidence. He played really well after that point in time and for the rest of the football game. And yes, this offense has not played its best football yet, and it's still 8th in scoring, as you said, 9th in yards, number 1 in the league on 3rd down, even though they didn't have a great 3rd down performance this past game. And they're good at the red zone, but they're going to get better. I mean, this offense has all kinds of room to be great, not good, but great.
One thing very quickly we saw yesterday, and I want to point out something Matt LaFleur said as I look at my notes. Yesterday, we saw Jordan Love use his legs maybe more effectively than he ever had before. He picked up a couple 3rd down conversions with his legs. Matt LaFleur said that was one of Jordan Love's better games, in part because of how he used his legs. He still thinks Jordan Love's playing really well. Obviously, you got to cut out the interception. Not only was it a clumsy throw, but it's in the red zone. You got to just eat that, take the 3 points. Love explained he thought Dobbs was in front of his guy, but that's just too risky of a play to make. But I think Jordan Love's aggressiveness, pushing the ball downfield, some of the big plays he made yesterday, combined with what he did with his legs yesterday, this is a really, really dangerous quarterback when he isn't making those dumb mistakes. And I'm sure he would call it dumb as well. So,
and as far as using his legs yesterday, I thought he was really aggressive when he saw man coverage and everybody bailing with their guys. He just took those opportunities as soon as they became available, did not hesitate. That was great to see the decisiveness. But I thought another really important play was after the Bengals, that is, took it to a 1-score game, him using his legs to get outside the pocket, rolling left, readjusting himself and firing a ball 20 yards downfield to Matthew Golden. I thought that strike was pivotal as well. So yes, Jordan Love playing at a very, very high level.
All right. After the break, we're going to touch on the other two phases, defense and special teams, because there was a lot to talk about with those two phases as well after yesterday's win. Stick with us. It's the Tundra.
Let's be real. Nobody wakes up in the morning expecting to need a lawyer.
But if you're injured, you need someone local, someone who cares, and someone who will fight for you. That's Nicolet Law.
They've spent 17 years serving the Midwest with a simple promise. We'll treat you like family and fight like crazy to get you what you deserve. No gimmicks, no upfront costs, just neighbors helping neighbors.
So if life throws you a curveball, remember this. You're not alone. Call Nicolet Law at 1-855-NICOLET or visit nicoletlaw.com. They're proud to stand up for the Midwest. Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 7, presented by Nicolet Law. John, we already touched on a bunch of stuff that happened on the offensive side of the ball in yesterday's 27-18 win over the Bengals. Let's touch on the defense and special teams now. And actually, I want to start with the special teams because everyone knows by now the neat story that happened with the Packers fill-in kicker yesterday. If you don't, the background, Brandon McManus said he felt a tug in his right quad during Wednesday's practice while he was warming up for a field goal period. He was confident that he'd be able to play. He planned to play, in part because he experienced a similar injury with the Broncos a couple years ago, didn't kick for the rest of the week after, getting the injury on Wednesday, and went out there and made 2 50-yarders and a 40-something yarder in 2022 on that Sunday. Brandon McManus did his normal pregame workout yesterday, and that was after the Packers had signed Lucas Havrisik to the active roster on Saturday, just for insurance. McManus said after the game yesterday to reporters that he felt like he could have kicked, but it would have been through pain. And after consulting with guys like Rich Bisaccia, the training staff, Brian Gutekunst, all who watched McManus's pregame warm-up, that they figured, well, I shouldn't say McManus figured, those others figured that it would be better to play it safe. So in steps Lucas Havrisik, who has kicked in the NFL before. For the Rams in 2023 were the only real regular season games he kicked in. He's been a practice squad or off-season member with a couple other teams. He went 15 for 20 on field goals that year, 19 for 22 on PATs. Comes in on short notice after 2 weeks ago looking to get his substitute teacher certification in Cleveland. And he makes a 43-yarder, makes all 3 extra points. And then he steps out there in front of a packed Lambeau Field in windy conditions. You were down there. You can attest to how windy it was. And hits a 39-yarder to essentially win the game. Matt LaFleur said, he was worried. Not because of Havrisik, but because the protection on the kicking units has been shoddy the last couple weeks with 2 kicks blocked. But man, if that's the last kick Lucas Havrisik ever has for the Packers, that's one hell of a story to tell all those kids who you're substitute teaching for one day.
Yeah, could be next week. It depends on when that certificate rolls in. No, I actually hope they keep him around. I chatted with him a little bit before the game. I did watch McManus's warm-up, and it did look like he could feel a little bit when he was getting started. Now, as his warm-up progressed and he started kicking to the north side of the field where the wind was into his face, he started jumping into it a little bit, putting a little bit more oomph into his kicks, and it looked like he worked his way through whatever feel, right? Sometimes you just feel it. Like you can feel that injury is there. It might be a slight injury. It might be nagging injury, but it looked like he could feel it was there, but he could definitely push through it. And I talked to all the specialists and they said, yeah, if this was not a regular season game, then yes, he probably would be kicking in. Or if it was a regular season game that we absolutely needed to get, he'd be kicking in it. But they all acknowledged this shouldn't come down to a kick. Well, guess what? It didn't come down to the kick as the game winner, but it came down to the kick, making it a 2-possession game, which was somewhat of an important kick. And I love talking to Lucas. If you remember, one of those 9 games that he played in the NFL, I think it was his first one ever. He came to Lambeau Field as a member of the Rams. Second game ever. Came to Lambeau Field as a member of the Rams and kicked a 52-yarder in that game. And I remember that game wasn't perfect elements either. He told me, I believe I can lean back on that experience because Lambeau's known to be one of those places that can be tricky to kick in. I think it would probably, if you were going to label fields tricky to kick in, you would probably label Heinz Field and Soldier Field as the top 2.
Acrisure Stadium.
Yes. in Pittsburgh. And you know that because we're there in a couple weeks. But yes, Acrisure Stadium, formerly known as Heinz Field. I will always call it Heinz Field. Okay. But Pittsburgh, Chicago, and then Green Bay somewhere in the third category, or that just below those two, is the trickiest. And that's because the winds predominantly come in from the southwest of Green Bay. So really high, they're blowing south to north. But as you get lower and closer to the field, they bounce off that jumbotron on the top, they swirl around, and they come back down north to south. So there was a significant wind. He knew that. He remembered that. And he told me before the game, I feel great. I'm super confident to go out here and kick in this thing today. And in pregame, he kicked something like a 63-yarder.
Yeah.
He bombed one to the south side with the wind to his back. So he went out there and he was perfect on the day. What was it? He was 4 for 4 altogether?
5 for 5.
5 for 5 altogether. Couldn't speak any more compliments for the young man. I hope he sticks around at least on the practice squad for the rest of the year so he can take the ride with this Packer team as far as they're going to go. Probably won't happen because they got the Hale on the practice squad.
Mark McNamee.
Oh, a new one. Mark McNamee. I forgot.
He's been here.
Where's he from? Ireland?
All year. Yeah, Ireland.
It's hard to remember the practice squad, guys. I'm impressed that you're able to do that, but I should be better. And Mark McNamee, you can't keep 3. You can't keep 3.
No, you can't.
But I like what Havrisik did. I hope he sticks around. Another thing that they did, a little switcheroo on the field goal team, was they had every offensive lineman, and they said, guess what, guys?
Yep. Every starting offensive lineman.
Yeah, you're going to finish these drives. It's only one more play, but we're going to have you finish these drives just because you're in there, you're big, you're our best blockers, you're going to stay in there, and they had great protection as well. Funny how that works.
They did. A couple other things I want to note. And look, even if it is Lucas's last game kicking for the Packers, last night was an audition for every other team who may need kickers because he tried out, let me get this right, he tried out for the Giants and the Colts.
On Tuesday.
He tried out for the Colts on Tuesday after Spencer Schrader went down. They went with Michael Badgley. The week before, he tried out for the Giants. They went with Younghoe Koo. So, look, that's a great audition for other teams. A couple other neat tidbits. Packers gave out one game ball yesterday. It went to Lucas Havrisik. And he was doing one of these in the video released by the team, kind of calming the team down. Everyone was yelling for Lucas to make a speech. And he was like, calm down, calm down, calm down.
Did he give the speech?
Well, he did because Rashawn Gary said, you have to say something. So he just gave a very brief message of thanks. But
he's a teacher. He should be comfortable in front of a group of young men.
A cool moment for the kid. And unprompted, Lucas told us last night that, he's coming into this situation. You're wondering, how is he going to get up to speed quickly? Sure, it's just kicking a ball. It's not learning a defensive or offensive scheme, but there are some more intricacies that go into kicking than you might think. The holder needs to know how you like the lean on the ball. Could that change because of the conditions? Has to get the timing down and everything. Well, as it turns out, Lucas Havrisik has trained with Daniel Whelan, the punter and holder, and Matt Orzik, the long snapper, in the offseason at several kicking specialist coach areas around the country in California and in the Carolinas.
Wait, so they have specialist camp like they have tight end school? They have specialist school like tight end school? That's amazing.
John Carney's a kicking coach. Dan Orner is another kicking coach that they've all worked at in some capacity. And then
who's the long snapping coach?
I think the long
Pat Manley?
Yeah, it might be. Matt Orzik's dad worked with Lucas Havrisik's mom at City National Bank in California. So they know each other, have some familiarity back to that. And Lucas Havrisik's brother was a linebacker at NAIA Azusa Pacific University. And guess who was on that team? Matt Orzik. So the familiarity was there. And Orzik actually told me and Wes Hodkowitz last night that helped in kind of getting them up to speed because you know the guy, you've been through the repetitions before, and it turned out well when the lights were brightest. The specialist world is
here. Everybody thinks you just go out there and kick a football, but there's a lot of detail that goes into this thing. I got to give another shout out to the special teams because kickoff and kickoff return looked better this week, right?
Yes, it did.
I think they averaged 33 yards a return. The Packers did, combination of Bo Melton and Savion Williams, and the Bengals were somewhere around 21, 22 and a half. So when you start talking about the hidden field position in a football game, that's the first down of every drive right there. So that's a big time key as you start looking about how do I rate what a kickoff and kickoff return team does. You start looking at the hidden yardage. The Packers routinely, that's 5 first downs over their opponent throughout the course of the game just with the kicking game.
Savion Williams and Bo Melton, both with some nice returns. Bo Melton almost took one out to the 40, and no penalties on the kick return team. All right, let's talk about the defense. I think the prevailing thought from last night's game is, why does the defense always start off so strong and then show some cracks in the second half? They hold the Bengals scoreless in the first half. Then the Bengals go on a 17-play, 10-minute, 14-second drive that kind of wears the Packers defense out and finishes with a touchdown on fourth down with Tanner Hudson. I wouldn't even say, really beating, but he kind of beat Quay Walker in coverage. Nate Hobbs was asked yesterday. I think I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, so I'm going to. If I'm not, we can just bleep it out. Nate Hobbs was asked about why there have been some of those breakdowns in the second half.
Just say it. You got that cool mustache. Say it.
All right. And it's backed up by the stat that the Packers have allowed scores on 10 of the last 12 second half drives on defense, going back to the Browns game. Obviously, one of those was on a short field, so not all of them are created equal.
Come on, I'm ready for the vulgarity already. Tell me what he said.
It's about discipline, man. It's about not giving a fuck how many plays you're out there. Not giving a fuck about none of them, bro. It's lining up and doing the same thing you did last play and not getting bored. Matt LaFleur said today when we talked to him that they're kind of searching for why the defense has failed a little bit in the second half, whether it's they're gassed, whether it's schematic stuff. Those are the answers they're looking for, because guess what? The Packers are still one of the better defenses in this league. That 40-point game in Dallas kind of skews their scoring defense, but I think they still have a really good defense. They do have to get that figured out, though, because they are the only team in the NFL, John. Only team in the NFL that has had a double-digit lead in every game they've played. But they only have one double-digit win. They haven't really put teams away. That's partially because of the offense, but also because the defense doesn't necessarily put teams away.
Yeah, and I would say the putting the teams away will come when we get a turnover or so, right? You talk about the finishing with the double digit. The Lions game, that touchdown that they scored, that was with less than 2 minutes left in the ball game.
Well, they did beat the Lions by double digits. Commanders game I'll give you because they scored another garbage time touchdown, and that was a 9-point game.
Yeah, what happened in Cleveland, that's not on a defense. The defense held them in that football game. We are talking about 2 second halves out of 5 games is what we're legitimately talking about. We're talking about the second half of the Cowboys game, and we're talking about the second half of the Browns game. And I'll give you one common theme. The 2-minute drive or the last drive in the first half out of both those teams, Bengals and Cowboys, they figured something out. They figured out, get the ball out of our hands, and don't let the pressure get the ball out of our hands to wide receivers quickly underneath and see if they can break a tackle or not. And listen, me and Melanie Collins, she did the interview on the sidelines, and then we exchanged some notes. Kevin Stefanski said, or not Kevin Stefanski, I'm sorry, Zach Taylor said right when we were going to halftime, look, we figured something out on the 2-minute drive. This first drive in the second half will show us everything. How we come out here will set the tone in the second half. Whatever they figured out, whatever type of rhythm or feel or key that they got on the Packers defense, they applied for the rest of the football game, and the Packers were never able to figure out what they figured out and counter against it. Every team in the NFL gets paid. Every team is trying to crack that code of what the other team is doing to them. And the last 2 performances for the defense, those teams figured it out right before halftime, and the Packers were never able to readjust. I do think if Ball King ever decides to show its head this year, ever, they're going to be able to put a team away. Knock a ball out, get a fumble, and get our hands on another interception. It's been a minute.
A couple things I want to note on that. Part of the reason the Bengals were able to generate yardage on offense was because, and Matt LaFleur said this, and I think someone else said it, veteran quarterback knows where to just go with the ball, even if it's getting it out quick. I think Next Gen Stats had Jamar Chase for 5 catches on 5 targets against Keyshawn Nixon. I don't think on one of those, he just straight up embarrassed Keyshawn Nixon. Keyshawn Nixon had good coverage. Jamar Chase is just the best receiver in the world.
So what do you call an embarrassment? Do you call catching tight catch and double coverage an embarrassment?
If you break a guy's ankles, if you just beat a guy by 5 yards over the top, Nixon was there in good position.
I'm glad you say that.
I want to share.
Hold on. I'm glad you say that, because a lot of people think when you get mossed or you get, some sort of ridiculous move catch for a touchdown on fourth down that you got embarrassed. No, Nixon was exactly where he was supposed to be, going against a 1-of-1 wide receiver, maybe 1-of-2, maybe 1-of-3 at the very most in the NFL, and he hung right there with her. I mean, you expect that guy to make some plays, and I still think he is having a darn good year.
So do I. I do, and I think he played a lot better than maybe people think against the Cowboys too.
And you might have Carrington Valentine to blame a little bit there, because Valentine
got in Jamar Chase's face a little.
You don't necessarily, when you get a sleeping dog, you let them lie. That's what they say, and he really woke that dog up before that fourth down. I think that all stems back to when they were going toe to toe. Remember when Carrington Valentine was a rookie and we went down to Cincinnati? And he had to match up against Jamar Chase for an entire joint practice. It got feisty there, and I think it carried over to the game. And I think Valentine could not wait to show what he could do on an actual game field.
A couple of things Keyshawn said after the game. He basically said they were forcing the ball to Jamar Chase, so that is why the refs threw flags. He said there's only so much you can do when you're getting back shouldered all game. He said their QB is a little iffy, but they're a good team. And he said, I guess Jamar Chase is just allowed to jump through my body and I'm not allowed to touch him. So a classic, great Keyshawn Nixon post-game interview session with reporters. He thought he played well. I kind of agree. And he was not happy with some of those penalties that the refs called on him. I want to touch on the lack of turnovers because Micah Parsons was asked about that. And I think this is common sense and the general consensus about one of the reasons they're not coming. Quote from Micah Parsons, teams not playing scared is what it's going to take for the Packers to get some of those takeaways. And what he means by that is in order to neutralize the Packers pass rush, which can really do damage, teams are resorting to runs, quick throws, checkdowns, quick games, screens, run alerts. Matt LaFleur said today that's been a theme through 5 games. Teams are changing the way they run their offense to neutralize guys like Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary. They're getting the ball out quick like Dak Prescott did, like Joe Flacco did. Double chippers are being used on guys like Micah Parsons if they want to run longer developing plays. So it's going to be tough to generate takeaways, John Kuhn, when teams are just checking the ball down, getting the ball out quick, not giving the pass rush a chance to get home. People are going to be hard on Micah Parsons and the Packers pass rush because the sack numbers and forced fumbles aren't there, and maybe the interceptions aren't there. But if you're not taking risky shots downfield to corners and Xavier McKinney, and you're not letting the pass rush get home, I think the Packers will live with that, just giving up checkdowns and incompletions because of pressures all day.
The goal was to win the game. The goal is to win the game. And the Cincinnati Bengals did not have a drive in the second half where they weren't down 2 scores. Every time they got the ball back, they were down 2 scores. Because of that, your mindset, the play calling, the whole theme of the defense might be a little bit different. Front fork, get home. Everybody else, don't let anything break our backs over the top. I got no problem with the way the Packers defense is playing right now.
I still think they could tighten some things up in the second half, but I largely agree that they're a solid unit. And long gone are the days of Mike Pettin and Joe Barry's run defenses. The Packers currently, as we record this, ranked number 1 in the NFL in run defense. I think 77.5 yards allowed per game. Jerry Jones got rid of Micah Parsons in part because he wanted to improve his run defense. I'm seeing Micah Parsons make some plays against the run here.
Yeah, and I love it. And listen, I will say this, 8 penalties in this football game. The refs were letting them play. I saw quite a few plays that could have been called a hold, especially on Micah Parsons in this football game. Not going to complain about it because they weren't really calling him on either side. But yeah, you would like to see a little bit more pass rush get to the quarterback and not just forcing him to throw it away.
Before we get to our Packers-Cardinals preview, I want to read you a quote from Matt LaFleur today on that very topic. He was asked about Micah Parsons being held and refs not calling it. Here's what LaFleur said. I would say this. Certainly it's frustrating when it's blatant. Like, those should get called, right? but I do think there's some situations where there's some close ones on us as well. So I think as long as there's a consistency, that's all you want, is if you're going to not call it one way, don't call it the other way, I would say. But certainly that would help. I mean, I know he's frustrated talking about Parsons, and there are some that are egregious, and I think those need to be called.
Sounds just like quoted me from 5 seconds ago.
I know, but I'm saying the head coach of the team is publicly saying that refs need to call holds on Micah Parsons. That's different than you saying it.
You see it. Everybody sees it. It's clear as day sometimes, but he'll get there.
Is that going to change anything, though, if the Packers send in a tape to the league or make it public like this?
Well, I don't know. Are we going to play the Kansas City Chiefs anytime soon? Because we're not going to get a call against them. I can promise you that.
Oh, boy. Here we go. All right. After the break, we're going to dive into some Packers-Cardinals preview. The Packers head out to Arizona looking to get to 4-1-1. I'm already looking ahead, John, Sunday Night Football against Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers the week after that. Ooh, boy. But the Packers got to go 1-0. That's their mantra. So after the break, we'll dive into preview for that game. Stick with us. You're listening to The Tundra. Welcome back to The Tundra. This segment is brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook, folks. It's football season. We all know how much you love betting on it, almost as much as we love watching it. And there's one sportsbook that's become the best in the Midwest, Potawatomi Sportsbook. You know what it is. It's the home of big wins, bold flavors, a bump in atmosphere, a big you-know-what screen, and more. Catch a game at the bar or reserve your spot in the middle of all the action for big events. In fact, you can bet on any sport at any time. Bet above the rest at Potawatomi Sportsbook. Okay, John, it's Packers-Cardinals week 7 now. Packers are 3-1-1 going into Arizona. The nuts and bolts about the Arizona Cardinals. They started off 2-0 with wins against the New Orleans Saints and Carolina Panthers, and they've lost 4 straight games since then. Not only that, they're not getting blown out. In each of those 4 losses, they have either been tied or had a lead in the fourth quarter, including that disastrous ending against the Tennessee Titans 2 weeks ago, who just fired their head coach, Ryan Callahan, today. But the Cardinals have not won these games that they're close in the fourth quarter in. Kyler Murray did not play yesterday in a loss to the Indianapolis Colts, 31-27, because of a foot injury. Jacoby Brissett played decent in his spot. But that's not the only injury for the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. sustained what appeared to be a concussion yesterday, did not return to the game after doing so. So Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., probably the 2 most important players for the Arizona Cardinals, are going to be ones to watch this week as the Packers head down to Phoenix.
And beforehand, they lost their running back Connor for the year. So yep. They are a team that they're hurting in the injury category. And we know what Kyler Murray can potentially do as a quarterback when he's 100%. But even if he comes back in this football game, he's got that foot injury. How impactful is he going to be? But I know this Arizona Cardinal team, as you said, they have been in every single game, not mattering who has been playing against them or not mattering who's been playing for them. And double in the fact that these games get kind of wacky out there in that dome. They always get a little bit loopy. If you remember the last time the Packers went out there.
Yeah, I remember it.
without Devontae Adams, and they just went out there and they kind of, bounced back and forth, and then it took a Rasul Douglas interception at the end of the game. I mean, these things just get a little nuts. I played 2 wild card games out there that both went to overtime, one with a Hail Mary. I mean, it gets wild out there. It gets loud. It gets crazy. So I'm not going to look at this and say this is going to be an easy win, although it says the Packers are a better football team.
If I remember correctly from that game, the Cardinals were undefeated. That was a Thursday night game. The Cardinals were like 7-0. The Packers were 6-1. They didn't have Devontae, MVS, or Alan Lazard. Rodgers throws 2 touchdowns to Randall Cobb. Juwan Winfrey, kicked what would have been another touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins shook Eric Stokes. I'm just remembering everything from that game. Henry Black had an interception. But you're right. Funky stuff does happen out in the desert. Packers handled the Cardinals when they came here with Kyler Murray last time. Forget if that was last year or 2 years ago. But this Cardinals team, like you said, is competitive. And given how the Packers have allowed teams, at least in the last 2 weeks, and certainly before that with the Browns, to stay in games, as long as the Cardinals stay in the game, something funky can happen, like you said. The stats for the Cardinals, 22nd in yards per game on offense, 17th in rushing offense, 23rd in passing offense. Like I said, Kyler didn't play yesterday. Jacoby Brissett was 27 for 44 with 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The passing defense is not good. 28th in the league in passing defense. Much better, 13th in rushing defense, 13th in scoring defense. They give up a lot of yards, not a lot of points. So I think this is probably going to be a closer game than maybe some people think. The line at Potawatomi is -6.5 in favor of the Packers, which really means it's 9.5 because you basically, the gambling rule of thumb, I wouldn't know. I'm not a gambler. Wink, wink. Certainly not on NFL because I'm not allowed to. The home team basically gets 3 points. So the Packers are heavy favorites in this game. I don't know if I buy that they should be this heavy of a favorite, but my score prediction, I think it's going to be some sort of wonky game until the Packers stop scoring 27 points. I'm just going to predict they score 27 points.
Smart.
So I'm going to go 27-21 Packers. Cardinals cover. But 27-21 Packers, they advance to 4-1-1 ahead of the big-time Sunday night matchup against a Steelers team. Aaron Rodgers is playing well. He's playing well. Threw a couple touchdowns against the Browns yesterday. Steelers have the Bengals on Thursday night this week. If they can get to 5-1 there, that sets up a potential 4-1-1 versus 5-1 game on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh.
A couple things here about this Arizona Cardinals team. They're 8th and 3rd down offense. They're 7th and 3rd down defense, 19th and 11th respectively in the red zone. So they're pretty decent at situational football. They can play those plays and play them at a solid clip. So Packers really good in 3rd down offense, or 3rd down also, both offensively and defensively. I think 3rd down might be a key to this football game as we go forward. But I agree with you. Until I find out the designation of Marvin Harrison Jr., until I find out the designation of Kyler Murray, I'm going to assume that the Packers are going to win this football game. I'm going to think that their offense is going to finally get things clicking a little bit better. I'm going to say not 27, 28. Give me 28 points for the Packers. And why would I think that this defense is going to let up more than 20 points? They've only done it one time this year. They've only given up 20 points one time. That was against the Cowboys. And I don't see Dak Prescott rolling out there for the Cardinals. So I'll give the Cardinals a solid 17. I'm going to go 28-17 Packers.
And remember, as I just realized I had myself muted to clear my throat and take a sip of water, and I actually reacted to that prediction. I liked that prediction of 28, but nobody heard me because I was muted. It'll be interesting to note if Christian Watson plays this week. Obviously didn't play last week. This will be his second, presumably full week of practice. Do the Packers feel comfortable putting him out on that field after 2 weeks of practice, after an extensive ACL rehab, or do they wait until they play Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football? I think there's a better chance Christian plays this week. We'll see how he gets through the week of practice. I don't know if he did 11 on 11, those live bullets we talked about last show that he needed as kind of the final step. I don't know how much of those, if any, he did last week. We'll see if he does some more this week. You can never have too many playmakers that can take the top off of defense, that can do it all in the receiving game. Christian Watson's not going to be your bona fide, typical 14 target, 10 catch, number one receiver, but he is nothing short of a game changer on the offensive side of the ball, and that could open up this offense a little bit more for the Green Bay Packers. Will be interesting to see if he suits up next week. Closing thoughts, John, and this is going to be a very open-ended question, and I'm going to give you the floor first. How good are the Green Bay Packers through 5 games?
I think they're as good as any team in the NFC right now. I mean, when we started the season, I thought they were the best team in the NFC. And then we had the Browns and the Cowboys. Those games get played, and we know what happened there. And I thought, okay, well, they're somewhere in the top 7. They're a playoff team in the NFC. And then I watched a whole 14 days of football that didn't include the Green Bay Packers playing, and I watched every other team stub their toe at least once as the Packers went out there and took care of business against the Cincinnati Bengals at home. This NFC is wide open, up for grabs. Even the Buccaneers, who look like they're leading the NFC right now, have a million injuries. It's a long season, 12 weeks left here for the Green Bay Packers, 12 games, I should say. I think they're right there with any other team. I'll
say this before we get out of here. It's not like last year. like you said, where the Philadelphia Eagles and probably the Detroit Lions are head and shoulders above the rest. Even throw in the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold if you want. I understand why Packer fans are complaining right now. The wins haven't been, I shouldn't even say the wins. It's been a win. The performances haven't been the prettiest the last couple weeks. There are still meat on the bone, as we talked about, in pretty much all facets. Special teams, the passing game, a little bit in the running game, even though that's starting to get going. On defense, certainly, especially in the second halves and the lack of takeaways. But the Packers are in first place in, I would say, the second toughest division in football behind the NFC West. First place at 3-1-1. If the season ended today, which it doesn't, obviously, we're a third of the way through, Packers would be the 2 seed and hosting a first-round playoff game. Don't take that for granted, Packer fans. You can always want more, but it could be a lot worse. And like John said, in a conference, and maybe even an entire league, in which there is more parity than in recent years, it seems, with teams like the Eagles and the Chiefs, and even the Bills faltering, this thing's wide open. And as long as the Packers are winning these games where maybe they don't play the prettiest, Aaron Rodgers once said, a coach's dream is to win but still have stuff to correct. And we can sit here and say, well, what if they figure it out? They may never put it all together. But if they do, there's that hope that they do for fans and the team. I see no reason why this team can't contend legitimately for a Super Bowl. Right now, they're a playoff team.
You know what's going to happen here?
Go ahead. What's going to happen here?
We're going to get to the end of the season, and there's going to be about 2 or 3 teams that are going to separate themselves from the rest of this conference. There's going to be 2 or 3 teams that make a run in November and December. And what Matt LaFleur said just a few weeks ago, where you're not going to and you don't want to play your best football in the month of September, it's absolutely right. 3-1-1, you play your best football November, December, you are in the place you want to be.
Do the Packers look like the best team in the NFL? No, but they're 3-1-1. They're a first place team at the 3rd mark of the season. Could they easily be 5-0 and the best team in the NFL? Sure. But there are a lot of teams throughout the NFL that are tripping up too. I know we kind of live in this bubble just watching this team every week. The Buffalo Bills just lost to the New England Patriots. The Eagles seem to be a dumpster fire. The Chiefs, the Ravens are 1-5. Every team goes through these lulls. And the fact that they're happening early in the season is better than if they happen later. They might happen later too, but I still think the Packers are a really good team who has everything in front of them, cliche or not, and can contend for a Super Bowl. I think so. So those are my final 2 cents. We appreciate everybody for listening to the Tundra. As always, make sure to 1A, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, subscribe.
Search the Tundra GB on YouTube or just Tundra GB. It'll come up. Subscribe to our channel. Watch on YouTube, subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, on Twitter at the Tundra GB. Episodes every Tuesday morning. Special guests to come, hopefully, if they don't bail on us. And we'll talk to you next week.